Hi Melissa, this is your custom feedback video. Great to talk to you in this weird way. So I know this is one directional talking here. So hopefully you watched the other video. If you haven't, probably stop this one and watch the other one so you get a broad sense of some of the big issues we're working with. This conversation or this feedback is really about the doability of this study. I'm not judging whether or not these questions are research worthy. Sounds like they're great questions. That said, they are great questions. I want to encourage you, while I have you here, continue to do well in the class. You're doing well. You're going to do well this semester in this class. And, so far, so good. You're doing great. So feel good about that, if you can. All right. So I look at your three research problems. So the first one, so you're looking at screen technology, and I think we're talking about screen time, or more commonly referred to as screen time. How does that impact the social, emotional, and language development of children 3 years old and younger? So, say screen time, I'm going to change. Screen time has a negative impact on social, emotional, and language development of children. The hypothesis says it has none. So, or null hypothesis says there's no impact. Great. So that's the right way to write the hypothesis, the research hypotheses. So I'm thinking I'm wondering what the methods are. So I see that you're involved in early childhood, or you're Head Start teacher. That's great. So a lot of the research, right, the current research talks about the amount of screen time, not if it does or doesn't, or any screen time. So I think it's really appropriate if you want to kind of replicate that or see how that applies to your population. The way you're going to measure this, but you need to think about how you're going to measure this. So if this is going to be parent survey, that's great. Again, we're looking for no more than 20. But you can't send 20 back and expect to get 20. You can't send 20 out and expect to get 20 back. So I don't know how many kids you work with, or how many, what your potential sample size would be. So if you think about it, what your parents would be comfortable and willing to fill out or disclose. So I don't know if you would send home a survey that says how much screen time does your child get. Or maybe you on a given day, or have them log it Monday through Sunday. We fill out this log Monday. How much time did they spend watching TV, or a movie, or an iPad, or your phone, or whatnot, and delineate those. That way you can get some breadth of the data, and then you can get, if you can get a dozen, 15, 20 parents willing to kind of log that for you for the week. That'd be great. Again, I don't know what your relationship is or what the likelihood that you'll get that. That's what you have to think about before we kind of greenlight that part of the study. And then, so they can log that, and then maybe you ask them, put a check mark next to the ones that you interact with. Is this something you watch together and you comment on? Are we playing games? And then on the other side, as far as language development, social, emotional skills, I'm wondering, are you assessing those? Do you know those? Or is that a simple assessment on your part as the teacher? Are you going to have a scale of 1 to 5? I know there's obviously lengthy, standardized instruments. Maybe you already know this because you do weekly progress monitoring. But so you're going to get all the information back from Johnny, as far as how much screen time, and then you're going to go to your file, or you're going to fill out your own 3 questions on Johnny and go, social, emotional, he's ahead, behind, about the same, or different degrees like that. Same thing as far as language development, is so and so ahead, behind, and then you're going to gather data that way. I'm suggesting, but this is food for thought for you. Does the size of screen matter? Ultimately, I think the size of screen is going to be a proxy for the type of screen. So it doesn't matter if he's got a giant iPad or a little iPad. iPads have different properties, or tablets have different properties of interactiveness, using apps, holding the screen closer. There's different engagement versus a television. So I would that would be my thought on that. You may find it differently in the literature, but that having a big TV versus a small TV, or a big iPad versus a small iPad, isn't really what would make a difference. It's about the types of technology. So if we're moving forward with that one, think about those things if you're going to decide to move forward with that one. Number 2, I'm going to assume you put these in the order of your preference. So number 2, so I probably want you to state this research problem a little differently, because it looks like you're focused on print-rich environment for your hypotheses. But so what factors influence, or what classroom environment factors influence language and literacy development of preschoolers, or what classroom level activities? Frame it kind of in that way, as opposed to how can the teacher, like what classroom factors impact language development. Then your hypothesis is that a print-rich environment has a positive impact. Great. And then, null hypothesis would have none. That makes sense. So we're talking about classroom arrangement. So I'm wondering, I don't know how big your center is, if you're the only classroom, and you would rearrange the classroom every week for 3 weeks and see if this week changes versus this week, week 1, week 2, week 3, or if you're going to survey 20 to 30 or 15 to 20 of your teacher friends, your Head Start teacher friends, and you send this out electronically through your organization, or if you're in a large building, a number of preschools. So you ask them, hey, in your experience, what classroom, it's like an interview, what is the classroom arrangement that you find has the most positive effect on language and literacy? Maybe you want to include some multiple choice as far as centers in the front, language in the back, print-rich environment, factors that you will find are related to those to language and literacy skills. I see you have some here as far as, print-rich environment, cooking utensils and whatnot. So, are you thinking that you're going to survey a bunch of teachers? Are you thinking that you're going to manipulate your own classroom environment? You only have so many weeks to do that. So this one seems a little more challenging to gather the data. Does teacher interaction with the children in the classroom environment have a positive impact? So, again, does teacher interaction have an impact on the literacy skills? So you'd have to see which teachers don't interact with students, or interact less with students. I'm not sure how you'd measure that one. It may be really easy. It may be really intuitive to you. I had a little trouble kind of getting my head around measuring that, especially in the way we're doing this project. Again, your goal is to learn how to do research or work through this piece by piece. So not try to make a mountain of work that's of unnecessary work. Number 3, toxic stress in terms of childhood abuse, neglect. So there's a bunch of great literature on that, from psychology. When it comes to, so again, when I'm thinking of surveys, this seems most challenging. So you're going to survey a bunch of families and say, do you have toxic stress? And for those that do or have had a stressor, you'd list specific stressors. You'd want to operationalize toxic stress, right? So specific stressors, like, does your child have a history of abuse or neglect? Or maybe on some more mild stressors, how many times have you moved schools, lost your job? Some of those stressors are going to be difficult to capture, because you need a really large sample. Granted, you're in a Head Start program, so you may be biased. Some of those folks need to have stressors in order to qualify, from what I understand. But it's difficult, because then you'll need to have people respond that say, we haven't had any toxic stress. And then you'll compare that to those who have had toxic stress and see how those kids are doing. So that's one thought. In the area of and again, we'd want to redefine toxic stress. Down here in your other questions, how can teachers recognize children? So these questions, this may be helpful if you have or this may be real doable when it comes down to these questions. So if this is something you move forward with, we may just want to reframe your hypotheses and your research question. If you're thinking about surveying, again, 15, 20, maybe you're electronically surveying a bunch of Head Start teachers in your company or organization about their awareness. Can you name 3, or how would you be, as a surveyed teacher? And maybe it's an open-ended question, so you're doing this interview gathering, or maybe it's multiple choice. How can you recognize students with toxic stress? What training have you had? I see this as one of those questions. If you did have training, do you feel it would give you more confidence? The teacher perception about their competence in toxic stress, what they know. I see their level of education. So surveying teachers in that way, because we know that toxic stress is bad for kids, right? So your research problem and question are more about what do teachers in Head Start programs know about identifying children with toxic stress? What do they know about the appropriate interventions? So trauma-informed care. There's you'll find some different search words we can work through. If you're going to go with this one, I'd encourage you to kind of Google that or get into those the appropriate professional research terms. And maybe you did, and that's what you found was toxic stress. But I think there's other pieces. And then, because we know toxic stress negatively impacts children's development, so it's how aware, teachers are aware. Your hypothesis would be teachers are aware of most but not all symptoms of toxic stress. Teachers feel overall unequipped to deal with it. Some of those hypotheses that are a little more about teacher attitudes. Okay, so that's my thought. Obviously, these are not 1 to 2 minute videos like I promised or like I'd hoped. Give that some thought. What I'd encourage you to do is think through, hopefully you took some notes here or you can watch the video again. Think through each of these. Think about the doability and about your interest level. See how they're going to match. And think through that, how you would gather this data, given some of the limitations I talked about in the other video. And then narrow this to 2 or even the 1 research question or problem that you pick. Send it back to me with some of the details and questions I talked about. Again, if you just end up picking, or once you pick one of these, you don't have to worry about any other changes I mentioned for the other 2. So work through that, get it back to me as soon as you can. I will do my best to turn it around as quickly as possible as I'm working through the whole class, and that'll help get your research kick-started. If you have any questions, email me directly. Otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing a revised draft, revise that, and send that to me via email as well. So this is a private process, it's no harm, but we'll keep it a private process. This link that you have is only exclusive to you. No one else has this link, in case you're wondering. All right, have a good night.